Let's talk about the moment our modern world was ignited. I'm talking about the Industrial Revolution. Now, this wasn't just about a few new gadgets and machines. No, this was a complete rewiring of humanity itself. How we work, where we live, how we even think. This is the story of how everything you see around you right now came to be. So the big question is, how on earth did this happen? I mean, for thousands and thousands of years, everything was powered by muscle, wind, and water. Progress was slow. And then suddenly, poof, in what's really just a blink of an eye in historical terms, everything changed. We got a world run by machines. So how do we pull that off? You'd think a story this massive would kick off with some great war or a powerful king. But nope, it started with something way more ordinary. A chore, really. The entire Industrial Revolution was sparked by one single incredibly frustrating problem. It was just too slow to make thread. Okay, so before all the factories and smog, the world ran on something called the cottage industry. And it's pretty much what it sounds like. People worked right out of their own homes, their cottages, spinning wool into thread and weaving it into cloth. It was a system that worked for centuries, but it had one huge hidden flaw. And here it is. This was the problem. A weaver with a hand loom was actually really good at their job, maybe a little too good. It took somewhere between 4 and, get this, 8 spinners working all out just to make enough thread to keep that one single weaver busy. You can see the issue, right? This created a massive, constant shortage of thread. Everyone was desperate for more. So the race was on to solve this thread problem. But fixing it didn't just solve the bottleneck. It lit the fuse on an absolute explosion of new ideas. See, this wasn't about just one invention. It was like a domino effect. A cascade of breakthroughs in textiles, power, and materials that all fed into each other. And you can see that chain reaction right here. It starts in 1764 with the spinning jenny, which finally makes thread way faster. But now these new machines need more power than a person can provide, which leads to James Watt perfecting his steam engine. Okay, great, but now the machines keep breaking because they're made of wood. So you get new processes for making cheap, strong iron. And finally, with tons of thread, power, and iron, bam, 1785, the power loom automates the weavers, bringing the whole thing full circle. It was one thing leading to the next. Now, the steam engine, this was the real game changer. It was like the great liberator of industry. Before steam, if you wanted to build a factory, you had to build it next to a fast-flowing river for power. You were literally chained to the geography. But steam engines ran on coal, and you could bring coal anywhere. All of a sudden, you could build a factory right in the middle of a city. For the first time ever, industry could go wherever it wanted. And people adopted this new power source like crazy. By 1815, steam engines in Britain were pumping out 210,000 horsepower. This wasn't some slow, gradual change. It was an absolute power surge that completely remade the industrial world in just a few decades. So, with these giant new machines and powerful steam engines, that old cottage industry was basically toast. Work moved out of the home and into these massive, noisy, centralized buildings we call factories. And this change pulled millions of people from the quiet countryside into crowded, chaotic cities. It wasn't just a change. It was a social tsunami that washed away the old way of life forever. Just look at Manchester. It was the world's very first industrial city. Back in 1771, it was a decent-sized market town, maybe 10,000 people. But just 60 years later, the population had multiplied 6 times over. All those people were flooding in for jobs at the new mills. And this same story played out in city after city. But we have to be honest about what this progress looked like for the people living through it. For this new working class, life was often brutal. We're talking 12 to 14-hour days in really dangerous conditions. Children were horribly exploited. In some areas, they made up 2/3 of the entire workforce, earning just a tiny fraction of an adult's wage. And all of this was happening while they lived in these crowded, dirty slums. It was a staggering human cost. Now, a revolution this big couldn't just stay in one country. This fire, first lit in Britain's textile mills, was about to spread. Its ripples would cross oceans, completely reshaping the global balance of power and creating a brand new, interconnected global economy. This table really tells the story of what some historians call the Great Divergence. Okay, look at 1750. The vast majority of the world's stuff was made outside of Europe, in places like China and India. Now,
Watch what happens. By 1900, the situation has done a complete 180. Europe and the United States, powered by their new industries, are now totally dominant. It's one of the most dramatic shifts in economic power in all of human history. And that new global economy had a very dark side. Those new factories in Manchester were hungry, insatiably hungry for raw cotton. And that incredible demand directly fueled the horrifying expansion of slavery in the American South. Industrial progress in one part of the world was tragically and directly tied to human bondage in another.
So all of this happened a long time ago. Why does it still matter so much to us today? Well, because the world we are all living in right now, our cities, our economy, even our environmental problems, it was all forged in the fires of this revolution. We are still living with the echoes of everything that happened back then. I mean, check out this transformation. In the year 1800, only about 3% of all humans lived in cities. Fast forward to the year 2000, and that number is 50%. It's even higher today. This massive shift from being a rural species to an urban one is one of the most powerful legacies of the Industrial Revolution. It literally changed where we live. The revolution also kicked off our modern environmental crisis. For the first time, the burning of coal choked entire cities with smoke and smog. Industrial waste was just dumped into rivers, poisoning the water. The pollution got so bad that they had to create the world's first ever environmental laws just to deal with it. This was the moment we started pumping greenhouse gases into the atmosphere on a massive scale, setting the stage for the climate challenges we're grappling with right now. And yet, and this is the really complicated part, there's the other side of the legacy. As the economist Robert Lucas Jr. put it, this was the moment that the living standards for ordinary people finally started to climb. And they just kept climbing. For all the terrible conditions the first few generations endured, this era kickstarted the economic engine that would, eventually, lift billions of people out of poverty and create the modern world. So we're left with this really complex, messy legacy, aren't we? The Industrial Revolution gave us wealth and technology on a scale that was unimaginable before. But it also brought immense suffering, inequality, and environmental destruction. It literally built the world we have. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, was it worth it?